March 13th, 2025, a 28-year-old Venezuelan man named Neiyerver León Rengel wakes up in Irving, Texas, and heads to work. He's a barber. He entered the United States legally. He has an immigration court date scheduled for April 2028. He has never been charged with any violent crime. He has never been a member of any gang. But before he can reach his job that morning, ICE agents stop him. They look at the tattoo on his left hand, a lion with a hair clipper, the symbol of his trade, his identity, his craft. And in that moment, with no trial, no judge, no attorney, no hearing of any kind, they decide he's a gang member. 2 days later, he is on a plane. He thinks he's going to Venezuela. He is not going to Venezuela. He is going to CECOT, the most feared prison on the planet. And for the next 4 months, his family has no idea where he is. The U.S. government won't confirm his location. His brother calls every number he can find and gets different answers every time. Today, Neiyerver León Rengel is out. He's alive. And on March 24th, 2026, he filed a $1.3 million federal lawsuit against the United States government. This is his story, and it is not just his story. It belongs to over 200 men, most of them Venezuelan, who were taken from American soil and dropped into a prison designed to break them. Stay with me, because the details of this case will shock you. Let's start with who this man actually is. Neiyerver Adrián León Rengel was born in Venezuela. Like millions of his countrymen, he made the dangerous journey through the Darien Gap, one of the deadliest migrant routes in the world, crossing through several Latin American countries to reach the United States border. But here's what separates his story from many others. He did not cross illegally. In June 2023, he arrived at an official U.S. port of entry in El Paso, Texas, through an appointment made using the CBP-1 app, a legal program created by the Biden administration specifically for asylum seekers. He went through the proper government screening. He provided his biometrics. He was processed, documented, and released into the United States legally with an active immigration case and a court date set for April 2028. He settled in Texas. He worked as a barber. He paid his bills. The only legal trouble he ever had in the United States, a minor traffic stop that resulted in a misdemeanor plea for possession of drug paraphernalia in a car that wasn't even his. He paid a small fine. That's it. No violent crimes, no deportation order, no final order of removal, nothing. And yet, on his 28th birthday, the March 13th, 2025, this man's legally built life in America was about to be torn apart. On the morning of his 28th birthday, Neiyerver was on his way to work when ICE agents stopped him. They looked at a tattoo on his left hand. It depicted a lion holding a hair clipper in its mouth. To Neiyerver, it represented his profession, his identity as a barber. To ICE agents following the Trump administration's new enforcement guidelines, it was enough. He was labeled a confirmed member of Neiyerver, a Venezuelan gang that the Trump administration had designated a foreign terrorist organization in January 2025. Neiyerver immediately told them he has never been in any gang. The tattoo was for his barbering work. He was a businessman, not a criminal. His documentation, his CBP-1 paperwork, his pending immigration case, his legal status was, according to his lawsuit, ignored. He was taken into custody. No attorney, no immigration judge, no hearing. Here's what makes this even more alarming. The Trump administration's own experts and outside researchers warned that using tattoos as gang identification was deeply flawed. Experts said Neiyerver did not have a standardized tattoo system the way more traditional gangs do. Many Venezuelan men were being swept up simply for having any body art at all. A CBS News and 60 Minutes investigation later confirmed that many of the Venezuelan deportees had no criminal records whatsoever, and that the majority had no charges or convictions for violent offenses. But none of that mattered on the morning of March 13th. Neiyerver was processed, detained, and placed in a holding facility. He did not know what was about to happen next. 2 days after his arrest at 6 a.m, ICE agents woke Neiyerver and the other Venezuelan detainees. They were told to change their clothes, and then they were told something that, for a brief moment, might have brought relief. They were going home, to Venezuela. That's what the officers told them. According to the lawsuit, every single detainee on the plane had been told the same thing. The atmosphere on the plane was, in the words of his attorneys, relatively calm. Then the plane took off, and the windows were covered. Detainees were told, "Do not look outside." When the plane landed, it was not Venezuela. As Salvadoran police officers boarded the aircraft, some of the men figured out where they were. They refused to get off the plane. They resisted. According to the lawsuit, Salvadoran officers went in pairs, 2 at a time, and beat the detainees. Men were carried off. Some were thrown down the stairs of the plane. Neiyerver watched this happen. He had just arrived in El Salvador. He was about to enter CECOT. And somewhere far away in Washington, D.C., a federal judge had just issued a court order demanding that these very flights be stopped. The planes had already landed. The Trump administration knew about the order. According to legal filings, officials raced to get the deportation flights airborne and migrants off the planes before courts could stop them. The administration would later claim the order didn't apply. Legal experts strongly disagreed, and 238 Venezuelan men, including Neiyerver León Rengel, were now locked inside CECOT. CECOT, the terrorism confinement center, was built in El Salvador by President Nayib Bukele as part of his extreme war on gang crime. And from the outside, it has been praised by some as tough on crime governance. But for the men sent there by the United States in March 2025, what happened inside tells a very different story. Neiyerver León Rengel spoke to CBS News after his release. He described CECOT in a single phrase, total hell. In his own words to CBS News, "There came a point when I thought about hanging myself with the sheet they gave us." Think about that for a moment. A man who entered the United States legally, who had committed no violent crime, who had a pending immigration case, who had never had his day in court, sitting in a foreign prison cell, thinking about ending his own life. According to his lawsuit and testimony, he was beaten by prison guards regularly. He was denied adequate medical care. He was forced to drink the same water he and other prisoners used to bathe. He was held completely incommunicado. No phone calls, no letters, no contact with family or any legal counsel. He was told by guards that he would be there for 90 years. His family in the United States did not know where he was for weeks. His brother called every authority he could find. Each time he got a different answer. It was NBC News, following up on leads from his desperate family, that eventually confirmed his location and informed his brother. These were not the conditions of a man awaiting trial. These were conditions that a November 2025 joint report by Human Rights Watch and the human rights organization Cristosal concluded amounted to, and I want you to hear this clearly, arbitrary detention and in some cases torture under international law. The report documented constant beatings, sexual abuse, severe restrictions on food, hygiene, and any form of communication. And all of this was happening to men who were, legally speaking, still under the jurisdiction and responsibility of the United States government. While Neiyerver sat in CECOT, American courts were fighting a legal battle that moved at the speed of crisis. On March 15, 2025, the same day the deportation flights landed, a federal judge had issued an order trying to stop them. The planes were already in the air, and according to court documents, the Trump administration knew about the order and proceeded anyway. In a related case that grabbed international headlines, a Salvadoran man named Kilmar Abrego Garcia was deported despite having a standing court order specifically protecting him from being sent to El Salvador. The DOJ admitted it was an administrative error, but refused to bring him back. The U.S. Supreme Court eventually ruled unanimously that the government must facilitate Abrego Garcia's return. Even then, the administration resisted at every turn. Attorney General Pam Bondi said in an Oval Office meeting with Trump and Salvadoran President Bukele that returning Abrego Garcia was, quote, up to El Salvador. Bukele responded, he didn't have the power to return him. Federal judges grew increasingly frustrated. One judge ordered the Department of Justice to provide daily updates on Abrego Garcia's status and described CECOT as one of the most notoriously inhumane and dangerous prisons in the world. In July 2025, after 4 months, Neiyerver and the other Venezuelan detainees were finally released, not through any U.S. government effort, but through a prisoner swap. And after returning to Venezuela, Neiyerver León Rengel made a decision. He was going to fight back. On March 24, 2026, Exactly 1 year and 11 days after he was arrested on his birthday, Neiyerver Adrián León Rengel filed a federal lawsuit against the United States of America. The case, León Rengel versus United States, was filed in the U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia under the Federal Tort Claims Act. It is being described as the first ever lawsuit filed by a former CECOT detainee against the U.S. government. He is seeking at least $1.3 million in damages for false imprisonment, abuse of process, negligence, intentional infliction of emotional distress. His legal team, Democracy Defenders Fund and Mauriziani, Stevens and Gonzalez PLLC, is arguing that high-ranking Trump administration officials orchestrated a scheme to punish Venezuelan immigrants, use CECOT as a tool of deterrence, and act in knowing defiance of federal court orders. One of his attorneys stated publicly, "This case reveals an illegal and morally bereft plan of action at the highest levels of our government to defy a federal court, strip a man of his rights, and hand him over to a foreign government for torture to prove a political point." The Department of Homeland Security still maintains that León Rengel had ties to the Neiyerver gang, but they have not provided any public evidence to support that claim, saying doing so would, quote, undermine national security. A tattoo of a lion with a hair clipper. That is the evidence they are pointing to for a man who may have spent 4 months in what international human rights organizations are calling torture. The case is now in the U.S. federal court system. Legal experts say it could open the door for similar lawsuits for many of the other 200-plus Venezuelan men who went through the same experience. This is not just about one man and 1.3 million. This is about whether the United States government can send people who entered legally, who had pending cases, who had committed no violent crimes, to foreign prisons without due process, without a hearing, without a judge, without even telling them where they were going. That question is now before a federal court, and the world is watching. What happened to Neiyerver León Rengel is not an isolated incident. Over 200 men went through the same system, on the same flights, in the same prison. Some of them had tattoos of their mother's names, Bible verses, music notes, autism awareness ribbons for their little brothers. They were swept up in a policy that moved too fast for courts to stop, too fast for families to understand, and too fast for the truth to catch up. The lawsuit filed this week is a landmark moment. Whether you support strict immigration enforcement or believe the administration went too far, the question of whether the U.S. government can defy court orders and send people to foreign prisons without due process is one that touches the core of what America's legal system is supposed to stand for. We will be following this case every step of the way. If you found this video important, please share it. Hit the like button, subscribe so you don't miss our next update on this story, and drop a comment below. Do you think Neiyerver deserves justice? Should this case go to trial? I'll see you in the next one.